Turn up the volume for this. A huge debate over a story about a date with comedian Aziz Ansari. Well, it has been carried out all over social media, headlines and op-eds after a website published a detailed account of a young woman's night out with the actor, a date she described as, quote, the worst night of my life. Aziz acknowledges her complaints and has apologized for what he believed to be a completely consensual act. The reaction to the piece has ranged from arguments that it weakens the Me Too movement to others saying there are situations women need to talk about in order to clarify what is misconduct and what isn't.
My take on this is that she had a terrible night of sex. She had a bad hookup. Emma and I were talking before. We both had them. I'm sure you've had them too.
Me, never.
Never, of course not. Not you, Stephanie. The problem is that, as Margaret Atwood put it so perfectly, right now you are guilty because accused. We are living in a time where people are being tried on Twitter. And if that is what's going on, I don't think it's fair, for the sake of having the conversation I think is necessary that we need to have about sexual mores and how and our broken sexual culture and how they're hurting women. I don't want that to happen at the expense of ruining someone's life who frankly didn't commit sexual assault.
In the wake of that piece, I obviously read it. I saw the conversation that was bubbling up around it. And I began speaking to a lot of women in my life, women who are not shrinking violets, women who are empowered in their professional and personal lives. And yet every single one of them had a story that was chillingly similar. So I felt like this was a unique moment to not just argue about whether or not Aziz Ansari is a sexual predator, but to really have a conversation about sex that may not be criminal, but is still violating. Because if this moment is going to, result in sustained culture change and not just a weeding out of the worst actors in the broken system that you were talking about, we need to dive into these messier, more uncomfortable conversations. I
agree, but I think we need to be drawing a really bright line between abuses of power, which is so far what Me Too has been about, that happen in the workplace, right? A studio director saying, you're not going to give me a blowjob, sorry, you're not getting the part. A factory supervisor saying, you're not, we can imagine the situation. Those are abuses of power
that directly impact a woman's future, her income, her career. When women in low-wage jobs are forced into sexual situations.
Versus what happens in the bedroom. Aziz Ansari had no power over this woman. Yes, he had more celebrity than her. Yes, he has more wealth than her. But if we're going to have to put every romantic encounter and sexual relationship through a sort of sieve to see who ends up on the balance of power, well, then investment bankers can't date bartenders. We can't go down that road.
I have been trying really hard to understand this one because they went on a date, they still performed sexual acts, and she was saying...
On each other.
On each other. Both of them. And she was saying that he didn't pick up on her non-verbal cues.
Yeah, which I don't understand.
Me, verbal cues are important as well. Saying no is important, but I don't want to shame her, and there's a lot of women coming to her defense, but I'm really mixed and quite honestly confused on this one.
Whatever happened to stop or I'm gonna knock you in your nuts?
Or just, I don't want to be here. I mean,
I want to go, or, yeah.
What's troubling when you look at the text message exchange, and I think everyone should, he reaches out to her after their date and says, it was a pleasure meeting you. And then she says to him, I was very uncomfortable. I went home crying. And he responds, oh, my goodness. I'm paraphrasing here, but I didn't realize. I had no idea. I'm so sorry you had that experience. So there clearly was a missing piece there for both of them. But the question is this really sexual assault? I can tell you it's not a case I'd bring to trial.
I don't think
because
it's
she voluntarily went with him back to his apartment. They did engage in sexual activity consensually, and then somewhere along the lines, she decided that she had had enough and she wanted to go home.
Ben, you wrote about this quite a bit, and you talked about her assertion that he should have picked up on her nonverbal cues. I mean, perhaps the strongest nonverbal cue is, grabbing your jacket and walking out the door, which women have been doing for hundreds of years. She didn't make that choice here.
Yeah, I mean, there were some nonverbal cues that were given, including getting completely naked in his apartment and then performing sex acts multiple times on him. If I were Aziz Ansari, I would be thinking that's a pretty solid nonverbal cue that you might be into things. Like, I mean, I have a hard time believing that she really expects Aziz Ansari, or that anyone from Me Too expects men to be mind readers. And this is the problem. It's one thing to say that we should believe women about objective, verifiable facts, or even just objective views of what happened. My hand went here, and then my head went here, that kind of stuff. But when you're talking about we have to believe all women's subjective perceptions of events that are often very messy, that are very confusing, that are very chaotic, and in which the feelings conflict in one person. Forget about both people. They conflict for a woman. I mean, this woman was enthusiastic at the beginning of the date. By the next morning, she was talking about how terrible it was. You know, is it the job of men to now decide when women are capable of consent? I thought the entire purpose of the feminist movement was to say that women are supposed to be the mistresses of their own consent, that it's not up to a man to say, listen, I don't think it's possible for you to give consent right now. I don't think this sex is in your best interest, and I don't think that we ought to be doing this. That would be mansplaining to the woman, presumably. So I guess men are caught between the rock and the hard place of, if we say no, and the woman actually is giving nonverbal cues that say yes, then we're mansplaining. But if she's giving nonverbal cues that we think say yes, but she thinks say no, then I guess we're guilty of what? Sexual assault or sexual abuse?
I hear you. Dear Grace, not your real name. I'm sorry that you had a bad date. I have had a few myself. They stink. I am sure it must be really weighing on you. It's hard being a victim. Very painful. Just ask anyone who's been on that end of crime and justice. I cover them every day. It's no picnic. But let's take a moment to reflect on what you claim was the worst night of your life, end quote. You had a bad date. Your date got overly amorous. After protesting his moves, you did not get up and leave right away. You continued to engage in the sexual encounter. By your own clear description, this was not a rape, nor was it a sexual assault. By your description, your sexual encounter was unpleasant. It did not send you to the police. It did not affect your workplace or your ability to get a job. So I have to ask you, what exactly was your beef? That you had a bad date with Aziz Ansari. Is that what victimized you to the point of seeking a public conviction and a career-ending sentence against him? Is that truly what you thought he deserved for your night out? Let me be completely clear. If you were sexually assaulted, you should go to the police right now. If you were sexually harassed and your bad date because of his actions mitigated your ability to do your job, you should definitely speak up and loud. Because that's happened to me too, and it stinks. But if you just had an unpleasant sexual experience, you should have gone home. Maybe just go ahead, tell your friends to avoid this guy, he's gross. Go ahead, tell the date himself he's gross, that he is not the lover that he thinks he is. And without question, don't go on a second date with him. Certainly do not marry a guy like that. But what you have done, in my opinion, is appalling. You went to the press with the story of a bad date, and you have potentially destroyed this man's career over it right after he received an award for which he was worthy. And now here is where I am going to claim victim. You have chiseled away at a movement that I, along with all of my sisters in the workplace, have been dreaming of for decades. A movement that has finally changed an oversexed professional environment that I, too, have struggled through at times over the last 30 years in broadcasting. If you're lucky, there's a really good chance that you're not going to experience the toxic work environment that the rest of us have endured, and that is because of the remarkable progress being made against the Harvey Weinsteins and the Kevin Spaceys of the world. The Me Too movement has righted a lot of wrongs, and it has made your career path much smoother. And here's where I'm guessing it's going to be a long career path. You're 23. What a gift. Yet you looked that gift horse in the mouth and chiseled away at that powerful movement with your public accusation. And I'm going to repeat this because it's important. If you were sexually assaulted, go to the cops. If you were sexually harassed, jeopardizing your work, speak up and speak out loud. But by your own descriptions, that is not what happened. You had an unpleasant date and you did not leave. That is on you. And all the gains that have been achieved on your behalf and mine are now being compromised by the allegations that you threw out there. And I'm going to call them reckless and hollow. I cannot name you publicly and sentence you to a similar career hit as Ansari because you chose to remain anonymous. Lucky you. But as you grow in your photography career, I really do hope that you remember what you did to someone else's career, all because of that bad date that was not a sexual assault, that was not sexual harassment by your description. And I hope the next time you go on a bad date, you stand up sooner, you smooth out your dress, and you bloody well leave.
Because the only sentence that a guy like that deserves is a bad case of blue balls, not a Hollywood blackball.